Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Meetinghouse, where we affirm the inherent worth and dignity of every person and where we support each other on our spiritual search for truth and meaning. My name is Jennifer Shannon, and I'm the president of the board here at the Meetinghouse. And I am serving as your worship host today. Welcome to those of you in the room, and welcome to those of you who are joining us by live stream. I hope that you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving Day. This morning, we welcome to our pulpit Kenneth Sutton. You might recognize Kenneth as our UU Meetinghouse administrator. He's been here for almost 2 years now. Yay, Kenneth. Before that, for 20 years, he was the editor of our denominational magazine, the UU World. And before that, he was the editor of the Quaker magazine, Friends Journal. He didn't grow up belonging to a religious community, but for many years he was an active member of the Quaker Meetinghouse. Welcome back to the pulpit, Kenneth. Yay. Before we go on with our service, I have just a few announcements to share. First, thank you all so much for your donations to our little free pantry. Between the canned goods that we collected on Sunday and the ones left by the school children who walked our gratitude labyrinth on Monday, we have a fully stocked storeroom. It's amazing. But we still could use some rice. Our congregation's annual meeting is coming up next Sunday, December 3rd. The annual meeting will take place on Zoom this year at 2 o'clock. There will also be a pre-meeting on Saturday morning at 10 on Zoom if you want to see the full budget and ask more detailed questions around that. So we hope you'll join us on Sunday, December 3rd at 2 o'clock on Zoom. We do need a quorum of members to vote on the budget and on 2 new board members as well, and 2 members of the nominating committee. So we hope that you will join us on December 3rd, next Sunday. One more announcement, our UU member Rick Kapler, AKA Wave, has an exhibit of 33 sacred wall vessels at the Commons in Provincetown, 46 Bradford Street, just 5 blocks away from here. The inspiration for this body of work comes from the fonts of holy water provided for passageways into sanctuaries. Next weekend is actually a really busy weekend here in Provincetown. Friday, December 1st is World AIDS Day. You are all invited to a vigil organized by the AIDS Support Group of Cape Cod. This will be at 4:30 at the Provincetown AIDS Memorial next to Town Hall. Rev Kate will be offering a prayer, and there is a chance to light a candle and speak aloud names of loved ones and friends who have died of AIDS. Also that weekend is our monthly racial justice vigil on Saturday, December 2nd at noon in front of Town Hall. We hope you can join us for that. Bring your own signs or borrow one of ours. And while you're in town, please stop by the Artisan Craft Fair taking place right here downstairs in Acker Bosworth Hall for Holly Folly weekend. And next Sunday morning service will be our Blue Holiday service. In this service, we are recognizing that the winter holidays are not jolly for everyone, and talking together about how to approach the season if you are not in the holiday spirit. And finally, if you're here in person today, we hope you'll stick around for a little while after the service and join us downstairs in Aker Bosworth Hall for coffee, juice, and conversation. And now let's take a moment to affirm the covenant that we have for our community. You can find this on the little purple laminated cards in your pews, or you can just listen and I will say a line and you'll repeat back. Love is the spirit of this meeting house. Love is the spirit of this meeting house. This is our great covenant. This is our great covenant. To dwell together in peace. To dwell together in peace. To seek the truth in love. To seek the truth in love. And to help one another. And now, as we light our chalice here in the sanctuary, I invite those of you watching online to light a chalice, light a candle, wherever you are, and in this way we can feel connected even when we are apart. I invite Dana up to light our chalice for us this morning. Thank you, Dana. This morning's chalice reading is by Christine Robinson. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, a sign of our quest for truth and meaning, and in celebration of the life we share together. And now I invite you to join me in singing our opening hymn, number 1008. It's called When Our Heart is in a Holy Place. It's in the teal hymnal, number 1008. When our heart is in a holy place. And please rise as you are able.
Hey, thanks to the worship committee for inviting me back into the pulpit. I'm enjoying this journey with you, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to share this side of myself with you. I invite you now into a time of meditation and prayer. During this time, or at any time during the service, you are welcome to light a silent candle at the table to the right of the pulpit, where there is a journal to record your thoughts and prayers. After our prayer, we will sing together Spirit of Life, hymn number 123, which is also printed on the purple laminated cards in the pews. We'll sing first in English and then in Spanish. Come, be present, enjoy the light, wonder at the beauty of the room. Whatever burden you carried in with you, set it aside. If it's important, it will be there to pick up on your way out. Feel your body resting in the pew. Feel the air moving in and out of your lungs. Feel your muscles relax. Feel yourself settle. Come, be present.
Our reading this morning is Sonnet 116 by William Shakespeare. Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love which alters when it alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. Oh no, it is an ever-fixed mark that looks on tempests and is never shaken. It is the star to every wandering bark, whose worth's unknown, although his height be taken. Love's not time's fool, though rosy lips and cheeks within his bending sickle's compass come. Love alters not with his brief hours and weeks, but bears it out even to the edge of doom. If this be error and upon me proved, I never writ, nor no man ever loved. Please join me now in singing our second hymn, number 6, Just as Long as I Have Breath. This is number 6 in the gray hymnal, Just as Long as I Have Breath. And please rise as you are able. Now is the time in our service where we take a collection for the ongoing support of this Meetinghouse and our shared ministry. As we enjoy a musical reflection by our choir, we welcome your donations here in the sanctuary or online through PayPal or Venmo. You can find that information on our website, uumh.org, and there are QR code cards in the pews as well. I invite 3 volunteer ushers to come forward for the collection. On and off-site, your offerings will now be gratefully received.
I am a poor she'd meet me when I come. I'm only going over Jordan. I'm only going over home. I'll soon be free from every trial. My body sleep in that churchyard. I'll drop the cross of self-denial and enter on my great reward. I'm going there to see my Savior, to sing her praise forevermore. I'm only going over Jordan. I'm only going over home. I'm only going over Jordan. I'm only going over home.
Thank you. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge that much of what I will say draws on Christian history and vocabulary. That is not because the subject matter hasn't been addressed in other faith traditions. It's because Christianity is the one I'm most familiar with. Like Unitarian Universalism, the Quaker faith I practiced for a good chunk of my adult life has expanded far beyond its narrow sectarian Christian origins. But unlike Unitarian Universalism, it has retained a large and vigorous Christian branch and still uses a lot of Christian imagery. I don't consider myself a Christian, but I find the tradition useful, especially, I suppose, because I don't have childhood indoctrination to overcome. One word in particular will appear a lot this morning: God. Please accept my assurance that my understanding of this word includes ultimate reality, ground of our being, spirit of love, a whole host of other phrases. But because it feels more natural to me and it's also faithful to the sources I'll quote, I will usually say God. I hope you will practice listening in tongues, to turn a Christian phrase, and translate what I say into the words and concepts that are most true for you. We've heard it said that absence makes the heart grow fonder. And it's true. When someone we love is far away, we can be filled with longing. But it's also true that when someone we love isn't standing right there in front of us with their all too human foibles and annoying habits, it's easy to think only of what we enjoy about them. It's not only people that this is true of. Have you seen the Facebook group and Instagram account Provincetown Archaeology? The Instagram account was at the forefront of publicizing the eviction of Salvatore de Dio from his dune shack. In the Facebook group, people post great old photos of Provincetown. But I stopped following the group because the comments were unrelenting criticism of how things are today and celebration of how things used to be. The last straw was a home video from the 60s that was so great because the kids weren't carrying cell phones. Yeah, I thought, and none of the women in the video had the right to a credit card. What an important difference between longing and nostalgia. I want to avoid nostalgia today. I'm sure we've all at some time, probably in high school, been desperately, deeply desirous of someone who doesn't even know we're alive. Or been in love with someone who has us firmly in the friend zone. I don't want to talk about infatuation today. Another thing I'm not talking about today, but which is real and deserving its own sermon, is love making excuses for abusive behavior. There is no excuse for abusive behavior. So, not nostalgia, not infatuation, not sticking with an abusive relationship. What is it that I do want to talk about? Well, in contrast to the reasonably uncontroversial statement, God is love, there's an entire branch of theology based on the belief that we can only describe what God isn't. In the Hebrew Bible, in 1 Kings chapter 19, Elijah is hiding in a cave. We won't go into the whole story, it's not actually a pretty one. And he hears, "Come out and stand on the mountain before God." And lo, God passed by. There was a great and mighty wind, splitting mountains and shattering rocks by God's power. But God was not in the wind. After the wind, an earthquake, but God was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, fire, but God was not in the fire. And after the fire, a soft, murmuring sound. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his mantle about his face and went out and stood at the entrance of a cave. And then a voice addressed him, "Why are you here, Elijah?" You may be more familiar with the still small voice translation of the passage. This is from the Jewish Publication Society translation. These verses are an early example of describing God by what God is not, but rather by what God does. Philosophers and theologians from antiquity to the present have held that God is unknowable. I like this statement by John the Scot. We do not know what God is. God himself does not know what he is because he is not anything. Literally, God is not, because he transcends being. Yet somehow that 9th century Christian ascribes a gender to the unknowable. I'll repeat it with a little less baggage. We do not know what God is. God does not know what God is because God is not anything. Literally, God is not because God transcends being. The fancy term for this tradition is apophatic theology, which is part of a pair with cataphatic theology, which makes affirmative statements of what God is, like God is love. Transcendence and eminence in dialogue. I'll give what I think is a musical example. Are you familiar with John Cage's 4 minutes, 33 seconds? Frequently referred to as 4 minutes and 33 seconds of silence, it really isn't, and it isn't intended to be. It is, in fact, performed. And if one is attentive, one realizes that there is no silence, that the span of time is still filled with sounds, although the performers are not playing their instruments. I think it's a provocative exploration of what music is and is not. The apophatic tradition is frequently expressed in mysticism, which aims for a direct experience of the transcendent beyond ordinary perception. The Christian mystical tradition includes writings about the dark night of the soul, a variously intentional or involuntary, temporary or permanent condition of not experiencing the presence of God. St. John of the Cross, whose poem gives us the phrase, describes it as an intentional stage in a devotional journey of union with God. In contemporary popular use, it usually refers to a crisis of faith or a difficult, painful period. I tend to call this condition spiritual dryness to avoid making darkness sound inherently bad. John of the Cross certainly meant it as descriptive, not pejorative. And I'm interested in these traditions because of my own life experience. I was raised in a culturally Christian but non-religious household. As a young adult, I began to explore spirituality with a lot of reading about religions, including neo-paganism, Buddhism, various flavors of Christianity. For a while, I was part of a group on the edges of the radical fairy movement. You may have heard of them, the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, a surprisingly complex mixture of drag, activism, and spirituality. When I moved to Philadelphia in my mid-20s, however, I became a Quaker, which, when I think about it, combines the activism and spirituality without the drag, usually. I became a deeply committed Quaker. I worked for Quaker organizations, taught, did public speaking, held leadership positions. I traveled to international gatherings where I met evangelical Christian Quakers, and I took part in a year-long intensive study of spiritual nurture. That course is where I was introduced to the 25-cent word apophatic, and I wonder, with inflation and all, what a 25-cent word costs these days. In the Quaker taxonomy, I was a spiritual Quaker in contrast to a social action Quaker. I was also very much a process queen, and Quaker process is at heart a spiritual discipline, not a political negotiation. In amongst all this Quakering, I eventually met a Quaker for whom I moved to Boston in 2001. That rather quickly didn't work out, but I stuck around in New England and became involved with New England Quakers. An unhappy confluence of events happened after a few years. I broke my ankle, which required surgery and general anesthesia, and which unsettled my life. Then, and as many of you know, more recently. I entered what turned out to be a very long spiritual dry spell, where I ceased to have any affirmative experience of the Spirit in my life, including during Quaker meeting for worship. And finally, I disagreed with my meeting on a matter of principle. I mostly stopped attending worship because of a combination of physical discomfort and the spiritual dryness. And the matter of principle involved whether someone should be admitted to membership if they weren't going to attend meeting for worship. I wasn't attending meeting for worship, so the things we do to ourselves. There I was, back in the world of the unchurched. My dark night of the soul did not bring me union with God. I did not find that my love was an ever-fixed mark that looks on tempests and is never shaken. When what I heard was no, I found I didn't answer yes. What do you love? Do you love justice, even when the world is so patently unjust? Do you love nature, even as humans have such a destructive effect on the earth? Do you love life, even in the face of sickness, pain, and old age? Do you love the search for truth and meaning, even though lies and cheating seem to be so successful? Do you love God, even though your childhood religious faith turned out to be hollow? How do people make it through? How did John of the Cross do it, or other Christian saints and mystics? Trust in God, faith in Jesus, hope for eternal salvation. The wayfaring stranger comforts themselves with a vision of the afterlife with no sickness, toil, or danger. In Paul's letter to the Romans, he says, "For in hope we were saved. Now hope that is seen is not hope, for who hopes for what one already sees? But if we hope for what we do not see, we wait for it with patience." Blind faith doesn't do it for me. None of these really do it for me. They rather strike a chord of nostalgia or infatuation with an idea that doesn't make sense when examined carefully. For some, they may have associations of abusive churches. Grim determination might do it for some, but feels pretty bleak. Where else do mystics and others turn? Prayer, meditation, contemplation, the supportive structure of a faith community, acknowledgement of the situation, therapy. Somehow people do manage to say yes to life. People say yes to truth. People say yes to love. I think the common element for people who say yes is that they come together in community, as we have here this morning. We share our hopes, our fears, our wants, our sense of loss. We share our joys, our accomplishments, our steadfastness. We listen to one another with open hearts. We enter into a loving covenant. We dwell together. We seek the truth. We help one another. This is how we say yes. May it be so.
It's become our practice to pose a question based on the theme of the service each week. It can be a topic of sharing at coffee hour or around your dinner table during the week. If you'd like to delve deeper into this question, we invite you to join us on our Zoom coffee hour on Tuesday evening at 5 p.m. Please contact the office if you need the Zoom link for that meeting. Our question this week is, how have you said yes when all you can hear is no? How have you said yes when all you can hear is no?
May we find today what we need to say yes. May we be that yes to those we meet. Go in peace.